Hey.
They just started drilling in my house.
Of course they did. Yeah,
It never ends.
it never ends. Well, here we are. It's a day. It's Thursday, and it's the 11th of
February 11th.
February. Yep. And we have a guest.
Yeah. We
Welcome, Emma.
celebrate episode 10 with having our first international guest.
Oh, the first one. No pressure, guys. Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I want to introduce you. You're Emma Kelly from Slack. Um,
Yes.
you helped us when we, or not acquired, when we got our deal set up with Slack. You were a customer success manager.
Yes. Yeah. Customer success. So I work with clients to help partner with them to make sure that they get the best value out of Slack and adopt the platform.
Yeah, that's super. Uh, so you're here to answer some questions that we got from the employees at KTH. We're super happy to have you here. You're as I you also going to take some questions from the chat. But let's start with the disclaimer stuff, because as usual, this is not the official podcast from KTH's IT department or KTH itself. It's just me and Johan talking about digital workways in our own way. And the same thing, I guess, applies for you, Emma. So these are your opinions and not officially
Yes.
Slack's.
Exactly.
So no one gets sued.
Let's
That's
hope
good to
not.
know. Yeah.
There is no money. Um, but we've been delving into the subject of digital. I mean, things are obviously we're all working from home, and that applies if you're in Ireland or if you're in Sweden or wherever we are. So I mean, we are trying to make do with a new situation, which is not so new, but still we're a bit unused to it. So I mean, digital tools, digital ways of working, and obviously one component for a lot of staffers at KTH is Slack. It's one of these building blocks on which our whole working existence currently actually resides. So we have Zoom, we have Slack, we have emails and stuff like that. But not everybody in our organization is using Slack. So could we just, because you've been talking to tons of customers, what's the difference between, I mean, Slack and email, for instance, these basic tools? Where do you guys fit into the new digital work environment?
Yeah, and this is one of the most common questions I'd say I'd probably get at least once a week, and it's interesting as well to understand kind of the perception of what Slack is in the first place. So, many people will perceive Slack as it's a messaging tool, and it's a lot more than that. So when you're comparing it to email, it's not like comparing apples to apples. And I can dig into that a little bit more, but if we, look at how we traditionally communicate, if we just take communication, for example, we've used email, and email's over 50 years old, which is crazy to think about. And it's never really evolved or it's never really changed. So, you're writing your subject, you're CCing whoever, you have your greeting, your middle, your end, you accidentally press send and there's no way to get it back. Like there's all of these different things. So if we look at it from that aspect, when you get sent an email or you send an email, you're pushing information on somebody as opposed to pulling information. So, have you ever been in a situation where somebody keeps clicking reply all and you're like, this is not relevant to me. I don't need to know this.
Uh,
So yeah, I've had it so many times, and then I'm tempted to reply all to say stop replying all, but then I just fall into the slavery. But for Slack, the way to understand it, I think, is it's a channel based messaging and collaboration platform. So instead of information being pushed on you all the time, you're pulling the information that you need in order to do your job or whatever it might be. And if we look at that from kind of the age that we're living in now, so we're on our Facebook or social media or our news, our subscriber channels, we're scrolling and we are subscribing to the information that we want the most. So we're clicking into the article that that we want to read, and we're scrolling past everything else because this is of interest to us. And Slack is very similar in the sense that you can be part of these channels, but you're just going to look for the information that you need to do your job at the moment that you're doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a very different. What happens is that in an organization we tend to start communicating in channels, and we get more and more channels. As one channel gets flooded with information, there is a little bit too much of this reply all going on. You fork away dialogues into more specific channels, and I don't know how many channels we have at KTH now, but we're speaking hundreds. With everything from stuff being posted, like we have a podcast in the general channel, very few messages, but they reach a lot of people, to very specific channels where people communicate constantly. So so it's an organic sort of way of structuring information and making it available when you have the time for it, and it's not going to be intrusive in a way that an email can be, for instance. Yeah.
And I like the in general, where the world is, we're going to a more transparent way of, everyone now posts their whole life online and everything. And so email is a bit sort of, you select 3 persons that are really important. They're supposed to relay every information down the hierarchy, and where Slack is more, or Facebook or whatever social media stuff you're working with, everything is more transparent.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, they don't know that Slack is an acronym. I got some feedback once to say you should change the name, and I was like, do you actually know what it means? So it's a searchable log of all knowledge and communication. So that's, to your point, Patrick, in terms of that transparency. If somebody said something, or you want to kind of go back on a conversation, you have that transparency to be searching Slack and to see that conversation again and to find the information that you need. And I think you're exactly right. We are in the age of openness and transparency now, and that's so important in the workplace in particular.
Also, I mean, a difference is that when you're new in an organization, which at KTH means you have only been working there for less than 10 years, that means you're still new. You don't have access to all the sent emails between people. So there is no way of you to sort of get into the bus of a domain. But in Slack, we will have retention, but still, the conversation, the ongoing conversations are available also for somebody who's just getting started, and that's a big difference, because normally you don't get to inherit the old emails of the person who succeeded you or preceded you. So you're starting with a blank inbox. Welcome to wherever. Good luck. So it's a big difference there also when it comes to the availability of data. Definitely. We've been adopting digital tools pretty quickly in our organization, and I think that is the same everywhere. From Slack's perspective, what has happened the last year? Have you seen an increase in number of customers, or an increase in the use of the instances or the workspaces, or how's life? How does it look for your customers from your perspective?
Yeah, and it's been an interesting time. So to give you guys all some context, I joined Slack on the 2nd of March. So just right at the start of the pandemic. And, I've been using Slack for a couple of years before I joined the company. So it was indeed a very interesting time. All of a sudden, we all moved. I did my ramping, my onboarding, all of that remote. But one thing that we did see, one thing that we look at from a customer success point of view and kind of as a whole company, is we look at the amount of people who are simultaneously online on Slack at once. So that's across the world. So we're talking time zones, whatever it might be. And we always get excited when we see this creep up. So on the 10th of March, we had about 10 million connected users at one time. By the time the 25th of March rolled around, we had 12.5 million. So the space of 15 days, we just saw this massive surge. And, while that was still exciting, it was scary for a lot of our clients as well. Like, I don't know one person who had a contingency plan about a global pandemic. And all of a sudden, they had to move thousands of employees on remote, and no idea how to do that. So, one of the focus from us from a customer success point of view was to help these distressed customers. So we typically launch Slack in maybe 3 months. We were doing launches in 1 to 2 weeks. And we seen like a massive surge. So we were just working as much as we could to help people. And I think, that theme of helping has gone across the globe, no matter kind of what, if it's a neighbor or if it's something in work. And one of the most interesting things I think to come from it is, when people started to adopt this kind of remote life and things like that, we started to see these amazing use cases come from Slack. So we started seeing, companies and applications that were creating new features on their app where you can go and help a neighbor and deliver shopping to them. And this was starting to become on Slack. So, Slack became people's office, really. And, apart from Slack has always been where we got work done at Slack, but that wasn't always the case for some of our very tenured folks. So not only was it a place that work was getting done, it was becoming the office. And I think one of the things for me, when someone says office, I think of building relationships, right? And that's a big element for me of like what an office means. And part of Slack was when we become the office, we had to get to know each other in a different environment than we did before. So, I have not met 90% of my colleagues in real life, but I can tell you what their dog's names is, and I can tell you what their partner's names is. And that's what it means to me when Slack became the office. So we saw this massive surge. People started to panic. Now they started to utilize it in use cases that were just so significant to what everybody's going through. So it's continued to evolve. And I think our year anniversary of remote work is coming up, which is just a bit crazy, like that it's been a year already.
Yeah. It's going to be really strange to get back to work. I mean, in an office, getting used to working digitally. That's going to be a change the other way around. It's going to be probably the same pains.
I think I'll have anxiety when I go back into a group. It's been that long,
So how do you get to know your colleague's dog's name?
Yeah, and
by getting Slack in Slack, or having time to have a coffee, or is it sort of, do you utilize it in any other way?
So there's
tips for us.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's a couple of third-party applications that we use as well. And one that I can't recommend enough is called Donut. And it automatically pairs you with somebody random in the company. And then you have your coffee chats and things like that. But one of the things that we did is there's a feature on Slack called Workflow Builder. So every day an automated message would go out in our team channel, let's say. And they range in messages. So some is like, don't forget to walk away from your desk. But it's like, oh, react to this post if you want to, join a Zoom and we'll have a coffee. And so it's proactively, reminding us like, let's talk to each other, let's get to know each other and stuff like that. I think one of the best things about Slack is the social channels. So, we have a dogs channel. That's why I know my colleagues' dogs' names, because they post pictures in that channel all the time. And this encourages conversations with people that like we would have over the water cooler. It's like, oh, I have that dog too, or, all of this kind of stuff. And I love that. And one of the newest channels, I'd say it's probably maybe 6 months old, and it's my favorite one. And it's called Social Yelling. I think in Europe we could call it shouting. But it's basically a channel where we go and everything has to be in capital letters. So it's like, it's this weird release that you can get when you type everything in capital letters. So I remember one time I posted in and it was like, I drank too much coffee today. And the impact of that in capital letters started off this huge thread with my colleagues actually in the States. And somehow we ended up talking about tractors in New York. And these are the things that kind of come from these channels and that are actively encouraged for us to speak to each other. And, I will proactively go into them when, after lunch, I'm hitting the midday slump I'll go have a look in the social channels, see what's going on. And I think that's been so helpful.
I was actually thinking about that the other day, that I mean, there's a lot of pressure psychologically with this pandemic, but it's also kind of nice because everyone is sort of bored and sort of frustrated that you can have a channel like that and sort of everyone yells. So it's kind of takes the pressure off it because everyone's feeling the same.
Exactly.
This shit,
yeah, and this is it. Like, and do you know, one of the ones that I'm not in, and like I have sympathy for people whose children are not in school right now and understanding the struggles that they are going through. And, you know, I get frustrated at times, and, you know, you've got your good days and your bad days throughout this whole pandemic. But for people, for parents to have a channel to go to and to talk to other people in that situation has just been so relieving for them, because they can, you know, relate and say, oh, do you know what, I'm feeling that way too, because we don't have this situation where we can ask each other. It's just, and people are like, yeah, any tips on how to stop this, how to keep this child occupied while I'm trying to work, you know? And I think that's been great too.
Not something you would do in an email. Send to all.
Yeah, reply all.
Anyone else feeling like this?
Yeah.
and really, I mean, you really target right now. I mean, there have been questions that we sent you some questions and that people have been asking previously, and basically it's how do we work with Slack today, and it actually boils down to what you mentioned previously. We went from it for where we worked until it became an office, more of a social binding weave. Because the office it's of course there is a desk, but mainly what we miss there is the banter where we can sort of complain or you know, vent something, or actually also, and this is what I've been missing, where you can get surprised, where you can get you know, something you couldn't, you know, predict in the morning might happen in the office. It never happens when your office is at home, at least, you know, unless the building becomes, you know, goes on fire, it's going to be quite predictable. So we need, in order to be sort of awake, or at least I do, to feel, you know, in the flow of things, I need unexpected things to happen. And I think that's where the social channels are super important. And we can't expect, you know, our boss to send that surprising email that, you know, will inspire us. He can do that.
Yeah.
He did that every day in the first weeks. But you can only send so many emails before, you know, even a manager's like, I'm out of ideas. They have to inspire themselves now. They're grown up.
Yeah, and sending those emails then becomes less of oh, let me really open this and see what it's about, because it's so regular. So one thing that we do at Slack as well to keep that excitement, I think, is our announcements global channel. If I see that bolded, I'm going into it straight away because my CEO is posting something. And this is like, oh, what's it going to be today? You know, type situation, and as well as those social channels as well. But one thing that we have is an Ask Me Anything channel in Slack, where we can ask our executives anything that we want. And, you know, obviously, first of all, if you're asking an executive something, you're going to really have thought about this question. So if I want to tag my CEO in a question that I have, I can absolutely do that. And I think, Patrick, that also kind of weaves into your transparency and your openness environment. And then, you know, as well as kind of like that exciting, like, I have the option to do this. I haven't done it. I'm not brave enough, but...
So as an organization, do you have to be brave nowadays to make this work?
Do we have to be what, sorry?
Brave. As a manager, do you have to sort of be up to it to take the hard questions and be transparent? Because that's what you say. The CIO of Slack could get any question from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, risk taking is a big thing about this, because there's always going to be, no matter what kind of change, what what if someone puts something really offensive in there? Well, then they're probably going to lose their job. What if, this, that, and the other, and stuff like that. I think, being brave is definitely an element of it, but showing your workforce that we have nothing to hide because we trust you and we want to have a safe place for you to be able to ask those questions and to give that feedback, because one, that means that we want to hear you. Two, that means if there's something wrong, we need to change it. And now we have a facility and a forum to be able to say that. And I think fear is an element of that, of like, well, what if they say this? But like, if anything, management's going to learn from it, because you're talking to the people on the ground who's giving you that feedback. Whereas before, what was your outlet for that feedback? Maybe 6-month review, and you forgot what happened 3 months ago. So it stays very topical as well, especially around the pandemic and even like the US elections and everything that went on in 2020. So it is rolling, and I quite enjoy that channel, I have to say, as an observer.
Yeah. Staying in Europe, it was good entertainment.
We have our own problems. No worries. No shortage of European problems either.
Yeah.
We are having a fairly big HR project where we're looking into, it's salaries and travel and stuff like that. But one of the things that's been lifted up there is the employee experience sort of layer, where we put new systems in place all the time. But the problem is that our employees already have too many systems, so they rather crave to be able to do more stuff in the systems where they already are. And one trend in that domain is to try to make more and more functionality available through some other layer, like Slack or Teams, or somewhere where people already are. Do you guys see that happening, that more functionality and more third-party apps and stuff is made available through Slack to make it easier to get more work done from Slack directly?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and it's something that we are like is always top of our mind. So right now we have about 2,450 integrations in our app store, and that goes up and up all the time. We have over 700,000 developers in our ecosystem, and the reason that we're trying to grow this is so that folks like you can get more value. So, I have all my integrations in terms of HR. The ones that I work with the most is like Workday. So, for example, yesterday I logged time off to go to Italy in June. Don't think that's going to happen, but I just did a / in my Slack. And it pulls up Workday and it says, what do you want to do? And it says log time off. I go straight to log time off. And those are the kind of integrations. And this is really what we focus on in terms of work is getting done in Slack. There's none of this context switching back and forth. We want you to be able to access all the people, all the information, and all the tools in that one place. And I think that the second element of that, is we have these applications and these integrations. If we don't, you can build your own. And we're doing more and more to release these APIs and to work with our technical and our development teams to help you build your own, because we understand that not everyone pays for these out of the box integrations and things like that. So we want to make sure it is a place that you can build upon. In terms of the employee experience, let's say, in terms of, if we look outside of the applications, is so vital for HR to have help channels. And help benefits channels and a place to ask questions or to know where to go. So one thing, and it happened to me yesterday. So I'm in the middle of applying for a mortgage, right? And my broker was like, I need this information from you. Oh, no. Gee, I like Slack. I love Slack. It's great here. But traditionally, if I was in another company, I'm like, who do I need to go to ask for this information? Who do I need to email? How do I find it? It's usually asking somebody or taking a little while to figure out. All I did was I went into Slack. I typed in help benefits is where I went first. They raccooned me and told me to go to HR. So I went to HR and I said, I need this sheet filled out for my mortgage application. Within 5 minutes, that sheet was done, filled out, and I was like, oh my God, if my bank was as efficient as this HR team was, I'd be a lot happier with them. But that's an employee experience element as well. Like, I know that I can just search help dash and a buzzword and find where I need to go to get the information that I need, instead of getting frustrated and not knowing who to talk to.
Yeah, because that sort of binding weave between the employee and all our systems, this is truly where we try to work on an infrastructure level. We're able to, but we need to find the interface where it makes sense for the end user, where this stuff is supposed to, where do I go for this or that? Because our teachers have so many systems that they need to be familiar with, and of course that's frustrating because they don't have the time, and they are they're stressed. Now they might have a little bit more time because we save on travel, but on the other hand, we're all fatigued in other ways, so we just want to make it easier. So I think this employee experience sort of perspective is an important one for the coming years, if we are to sort of really find make it's a competitive edge for an employer to be able to actually offer a holistic sort of work environment digitally.
And so this is what we do. I mean, this is digitalization for real, to make a path that is easy to walk.
Exactly.
So that's what we're struggling with. Our old companies like us, or organizations, we have our legacy systems, and they're separate islands with no connections. So hopefully we're going to build that path.
And I think this perspective is one that we need to keep pushing a bit, because it's also for our managers, they need to see this as a possibility for them to get their systems being more utilized. And it's not always about buying a new interface for your system and hope that will make it better, because it's unlikely that people even find the right system. This is the problem. They don't even know where you're supposed to go, especially in the first 10 years when you're new. In our organization, it's really like a hurdle track where you sort of only the strong will survive, and we want to make it a bit easier to survive. And also, I mean, these days we need to think differently, because now you can't go to the office and find the right person because they're not there anymore.
Yeah, and if you think about it as well from the aspect, because like this way of working is relatively new. Like Slack is only 7 years old, when we think about it like that. But like you said, in terms of like the systems and we need to push people to them. Imagine using Slack and having an integration, and that automatically pushes people to the systems because it's so easy to use. And that's why a lot of clients will actually use us, because they find that it pushes more users to their other applications, therefore increasing kind of the return on investment. And that's probably just something that we've not really thought about before in terms of the way we've worked.
The time in between is where the costs are, not in actually doing the work.
Exactly.
We got some just low-hanging fruits. Are there any functionality within Slack that you think people are miss out on? Is there something they should try out after watching this pod? Anything that you like to use that you see that few clients are actually utilizing the way they should?
So I will go with, there's two that pop to mind, but I'm going to go with Slack Connect, because I think this was a release last year. We have about 64,000 paid clients using it at the moment, but the potential for this is huge. So this is a channel where you can partner with up to 20 external people. And I think in an education industry where you guys love to collaborate with your research and everything that you do, that this can be so efficient for you guys in particular. And it's like email, but faster, basically. So instead of, sending your emails, all of the people within this project, for example, are in one channel. Again, information is searchable. Somebody leaves the project, someone else joins. They have a whole history of like what's going on. And one of my clients has been using Slack Connect for quite a while. And I was talking to him the other day, and he was like, my emails have reduced by 80% because I use Slack Connect. And if we think about it in a way, you know, if you wanted back in a time when we could to go out to dinner with your partner and you're in work and you want, let's say, oh, I'm going to see if they want to go out to dinner tonight. Would you email them or would you text them? You definitely most certainly wouldn't email them because they probably wouldn't see it. And, you know, you would text them because you would get a faster response. And I think that's the closest analogy I can kind of come to with the Slack Connect channel. And you're bringing all the parties that are involved into one place and partnering. And it's just so effective. And, you know, one of my clients is telling me they work in a consultant firm. So they do a lot of kind of external partnerships and need a lot of people's input to get their projects done. So he was saying that he used to wait in anywhere between 5 and 10 days to get a reply from an external partner. With Slack Connect, he gets it within a couple of hours. And he said it's changed the way he's worked. And coming in the next, I'm going to say 2 to 3 weeks, I'm not going to promise a timeline or my product team will come after me. But it's coming and it's really, yeah, it's really exciting. So disclaimer there, just in case my product team ever see this. But we're going to have Slack Connect DM releasing in the next couple of weeks. So you also have a channel to collaborate. But now you can just add someone's email in and then start to DM them straight away. So you don't have that barrier anymore. And that's like, I have to say, that's probably the most exciting feature for me that's coming this year. And it's going to change the landscape of how we work. But Slack Connect is definitely the most underutilized one at the moment, I would say, in my opinion.
Cool.
Very cool.
Half an hour is up.
Yeah, time flies.
Oh, that was quick.
And I think there will always, when you do something like this, people will find it afterwards and they might have questions. I hope it's okay that we compile the questions and send them, and we'll see what we can do with it, because we are in the very beginning of working with Slack in this sort of employee experience. So it's a journey that we see, you know, that is years to come. So I think we have both laws and regulations that sometimes present problems for us when it comes, for instance, with the Connect. But it's also a question of perspectives and us finding the right way of solving stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think we're gonna be a more mature organization within a few years, actually. So hopefully we can come back to you now and then, and we can talk a little bit about these various sort of crossroads where we end up and where we are thinking where to go next.
Yeah, 100%. I'm more than happy to help. I really enjoyed this human interaction today. It's really set me up for the day. So, you know, thanks so much for having me. And I'm happy to answer any questions that come off this. You know, and we could have sat talking about this for another hour. So I'm sure there will be questions. But yeah, definitely send them my way.
Definitely. Cool. Thank you so much for taking time. And see you around.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.